Good morning, welcome to Fairy and Spoilt. I want to talk to you today about dog pancreatitis and how high fat foods can cause it. So I just recently heard another story of a neighbour of mine, their friend, their dog is at the vets now with pancreatitis and in a very, very bad way. And there's a couple of other stories that I've heard recently, and I know in my time there's been dogs that, not directly that I've known, but it's a thing. I've heard of it regularly, and so I've always known that you don't feed dogs high fat foods because it can cause it and everything. But I just thought to myself, I don't think I know enough about this, and I just want to do a bit of research and just make sure there's nothing I'm missing. So I've done some research, and I thought I'd just share it with you in case you're not aware of it. So pancreatitis is something where it can be caused by dogs that eat too much fat. Because of this, I'm careful about what I feed my dogs, because I do half of their food is dog food and then half of their food I home cook. So in a minute I'm going to take you into the kitchen and show you the foods that I do and then the ones I stay away from. And some of it is, it's a bit tricky because like some of it you wouldn't, I mean, it's just like meat. You wouldn't really think that it would be a problem. As an example, lamb. And it's funny actually because somebody just messaged me about this the other day, and I had at that time started to think I just need to research pancreatitis a bit more. But I don't feed my dogs lamb simply because I bought a packet of it, a minced lamb, to make their dog treats with. And I was really surprised at when it was cooking how much fat came out of it, and so it just felt really greasy and oily to me, and so I don't feed them lamb. It seems okay if it's in a dog food, so I feed them darking heads, barking heads, and Harringtons, and wet food, and they do a lamb version, and that's fine. But cooking it, if you just buy it human grade lamb, there's just too much fat, and so I don't feed that. There's other stuff as well. I'm going to take you into the kitchen in a minute and show you that. But all the examples, every single example that I know of dog having pancreatitis, it's happened because they were fed bits of takeaway food. So the case that I know the closest was somebody I worked with, and she had this darling little dog, and he used to come to the office every day. Sweetest little dog. And she got a new boyfriend, and she was going out somewhere, and he was looking after her, the dog. And he really loved the dog, really, really loved the dog. It was great with him. But he hadn't had dogs, he didn't know anything about dogs. And he brought some fried chicken, and the little dog was quite upset that his mum had gone out. And to help him, the man who was looking after him fed him some of this Kentucky Fried Chicken. And it was obviously really, really fatty and oily. And the poor dog got, that night, had a pancreatitis attack and was in the vets for days, and it was real hit and miss whether he was going to make it or not. Luckily he did, and everything was fine, but you know, for those few days we were scared. And not just the fact that, you know, it was scared. He does like to block the camera, doesn't he, Humps? Not just the fact that it was really scary and, you know, and all that, but awful suffering for the dog, which is the most important thing. And it really, really painful for dogs, and really, really scary because he had to be at the vet for like 3 days, I think it was. So it's not just the fact of how we are educated, but it's educating people that look after your dogs. Because this poor bloke, he was just doing what he thought was a good thing, and the poor bloke nearly killed the dog, and you know, that's awful. So it's about also letting people know that look after your dogs. So it's high fat foods. So the situation that seems to trigger it to happen really quickly, like within an hour, is if you feed them takeaway food, because of the fat high content. So I don't really eat takeaway food, but I just can't. It makes me feel so bad these days. I just can't. I'm at that age where I have had to go all healthy. But so my concern is feeding them stuff that's in the kitchen. So I'll take you into the kitchen now. I'll show you that, and then I want to talk to you about the signs because I think that's really important. This is the turkey I feed them, and you can see here you've got the 2% fat, extra lean. I get this in turkey and I get it in chicken. It has to be the 2% extra lean. If I go higher than that, that you get the grease, it's greasy, and that worries me, so I don't. So I always get 2%. Never, I don't go for, like, sometimes you can get turkey 7%, and I think that's got way too much fat in it. It's greasy, so I don't use that. I get this in the turkey or the chicken, and I get it from Aldi or Asda, and I think I pay £2.50. I think I pay a packet for 500 grams. But the 2% is, and I don't go higher than that because that scares me, and I'm not sure about that at all. The other foods that I feed them are salmon. Now, this is what I do with salmon. I feed them frozen salmon. I don't give them fresh salmon. That's way too expensive. I can't afford that. But I give them frozen salmon because that doesn't seem to be very fatty. Now, the thing is with salmon is that the oil that's in salmon has its place and is actually quite vital. Salmon in itself is really important if you're doing home cooking because of the omega-3. But the salmon oil in itself does have its place. And so what I do is I buy a tin of salmon from the supermarket, and I feed them a spoonful of that every day because of the oil. However, I never feed them this from a tin. Sorry, my washing machine is going. Sorry. I never feed them this from a tin for an actual meal because the fat content of it, I think it is just too high, and that scares me. So just a spoonful of tin salmon. But the difference between tin salmon and then salmon that has been frozen salmon, the frozen salmon is much drier without all the oil. But that is an important oil. See what I mean? You have to think about these things. It gets confusing. So a spoonful of that every day because the oil is vital. But I would never give them like a meal of tin salmon because the oil is just too much. Only frozen and fresh. I can't afford to feed my dogs fresh salmon. If you can, that's wonderful. But you still got to be careful because fresh salmon can still... We know I eat fresh salmon. Me and my husband eat fresh salmon for dinner once a week. And sometimes it can be really quite fatty. So you'd have to watch that. But I really like the frozen salmon. Just frozen salmon from Asda or Aldi. And it is... no, not Aldi. I just get that from Asda or Tesco's. And it's just... It's there's no fat in it. And it's that bit cheaper. The other thing I get them is... Should we have a look at humps while I'm talking about this? The other thing I get them is chicken. I can't really afford to be feeding them fresh chicken breast because that's really expensive now. But sometimes if it's reduced in the supermarket, I'll get them that. But what I get them is frozen chicken breasts. That works out not too expensive at all. And in my supermarket, I can get a great big bag of them. And that fat content, they don't have grease coming out of them. And I don't feed them lamb anymore, like I said. I don't feed them lamb because the fat content on that is very visibly greasy and oily, so I don't feed them that. Right, so that's that. I want to talk to you about the signs of it. I think the signs of it are quite scary because they're vague, and that's quite scary. So if your dog has had like a high dose of fat, like like that man had done where he shared his chicken with him, the signs are quite drastic. And I know with this little dog, he was crying in pain and very uncomfortable. He was pacing. He was very clearly something was wrong. Straight to the vet. So there's all the usual signs, like the dog is pacing, the dog is in pain. A dog that's in pain will pant. They'll pant for many other reasons as well. But if he's pacing and panting, then that's something you need to be very aware of. What are you doing, Humps? Did you just eat your fly? Honestly, this dog here, so he's our latest one. He's our latest rescue from Korea, and he's feral. He's really feral. And aren't you, darling? I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm just explaining why you just ate the fly. He's proper feral. He has a lot of very feral behaviours. Aren't you, sweetheart? And one of them is eating flies, and he catches them really well. Really, really well, don't you? You're a pro, aren't you? You're better than Mr. Miyagi at it, aren't you? You are. Really good at it. What was I saying? So you disturbed me, darling. I was in mid-sentence. Right, yes, if a dog is pacing and panting, Don't get me wrong, just because a dog's pacing and panting, that doesn't mean you go off to the vets, because it could just be that they're hot. It could be other reasons, but that's just always a sign you need to be aware of. Diarrhea, vomiting, and all of that. But one thing that I've Googled it, and one thing that it said, and I'm going to ask the people that this has happened to and find out if their dog did it. But they said the dog will often get into a praying position. So his bum will be up in the air and his front legs will be down. So I'm assuming, you know, when a dog is play bowing, I'm assuming it will kind of look like that. So I thought that was interesting. But the concerning thing about this is that apart from that, I think the symptoms are quite vague. And if you're feeding your dog, so if you're feeding your dog, if you're concerned about the foot coming out the back of Albert, that's my foot. Don't be alarmed. if you, Oh, this video. Sometimes I just don't know how I get away with my videos. I don't do any editing. I pick up my camera and I just talk. So this is what my thoughts on this are. Yeah, sure. If you have fed your dog a takeaway and it's really, really high fat and the pancreas has gone suddenly and that's happened that way. But if you are just slowly feeding your dog on a high fat diet, then I wonder if perhaps the symptoms won't be quite as severe and therefore easier to miss. And that concerns me. So I'm really strict about the foods that I'm feeding them. I think it's quite hard to know. I think the symptoms, you know, and being tired, lethargic, diarrhea, sickness, they're all stuff that happen for lots of different reasons. But definitely, if somebody has fed them some real high fat food and you see anything like that, get them to the vet. Don't mess around, because it's very, very serious. Don't mess around with it at all. Get them to the vet. It's just something to be aware of. I think with dogs there are so many diseases and so many situations to be aware of, but this is one that I keep hearing. It keeps coming up, and when one of my next door neighbours told me that it happened to someone they know, I thought, I need to check this. I need to make sure that I know everything. But there really isn't that much to know. Just that high fat is in dogs can cause problems to the pancreas, and it's very, very serious. So that's it. So we're going to go now. Humps here is having an ear scratch. He loves having his ear scratched. He loves me getting right in there. Don't you, darling? And having an ear scratch. Right, me and my fabulous camera work are going to go now. I hope you all have a really good day. If you want to ask me anything, pop it into comments. There's Instagram DMs if you want to, you don't want to put it public and you just want to ask me something. I've now finally got around to listing everything. Well, not everything. I'm working on the list. I'm working on it. But listing the stuff that I use for my dogs all the time. And I'm on TikTok and Instagram. So I hope that you're well. And I hope that you never have to deal with pancreatitis in your dog. And we'll see you soon in the next video. Bye-bye.